This meeting is being recorded.
Hello, wonderful. This is Sarah K Ramsey. I'm here with Megan Hunter of the High Conflict Institute, and we both decided that we're pretty awesome. We decided this before you got on the call, so no, I'm totally playing, but we've had such a good time already, and I want you to hear the joy and hear that fun, because one of the comments that I'm always getting is like, oh, it's so nice to hear about really tough subjects without feeling like you're like falling into a hole of despair. And that is mine and Megan's hope, that we're going to hit hard things, but we're going to hopefully leave you with hope and with joy and with a plan, not just with toxic people suck. And yes, you know them. Hello, Megan. How are you?
Hi, thank you, Sarah K. I'm so happy to be here, and I'm so grateful that you're having me on. And I am, big shout out, hello to your listeners, and can't wait to, hear what everybody else has to say afterwards.
Absolutely. So let's describe. Of course, we have to start with what a high conflict personality is. How would you describe that to our listeners?
So the short answer to that is these are the people that you dread being around or seeing because you are so exhausted from the chaos and disruption. So the three words we hear the most are exhaustion, chaos, and dread. So if there's that person you dread being around, and you really don't want to be around them at all, that's usually them, because they're blamers, complainers, disruptors, very all or nothing, and overly emotional, dramatic, but mostly blamers.
And I know the word narcissism is quite popular now. And I also make the recommendation to my ladies, if you want anyone to believe you, please use I'm describing someone with a high conflict personality, or I was married to someone with a high conflict personality, or my mother has a high conflict personality, rather than my mother is a narcissist.
Right.
I see you nodding, and I actually think I may have got that advice from you guys. So, but tell people why that's important.
Yeah, 15 years ago, what was trending was borderline personality disorder, right? Before that, it was bipolar. And we still hear people, come to us all the time and say, oh, I think my so-and-so is bipolar. Well, there's a real distinction, even though some of the behaviors are the same between someone with like borderline personality or narcissistic personality and bipolar, but there are very differences. But what the point of that is that our brain tends to think that when we meet someone or have an experience with someone that's outside the norm of what we have with everyone else, we immediately label it. And if we label it, the first go-to is usually bipolar. And it could be that, but there's this whole other thing with narcissists, borderline, histrionic, antisocial, sociopaths, paranoid, all these personality types that we talk about being the underlying bits of a high conflict personality, perhaps. So if you go into someone's office, or you go to say to someone that you are dealing with that you think is exceedingly challenging and difficult, and you say, well, you're such a narcissist, it's just not going to go well if with anyone. No one likes to be called that, or you're a borderline, or you have a high conflict personality. But if it is someone who actually does have a high conflict personality, or is has one of these underlying disorders, they probably don't know it in the first place. It's just not going to go well, because these are the folks who have the thinnest skin, and they have what I call a fear-based operating system. And that fear is, let's say for the narcissist, is a fear of feeling inferior. So if you say you're a narcissist, what does that do? It triggers their fear. And what do we do when we get in a fear state? We want to get back to our safe state. And the way a narcissist does that is to put you down or, allege something against you. Or in worst case, there might be violence involved. So we just don't want to label things, label people. We don't want to tell them they're high conflict. We don't want to spread around that they're high conflict or a narcissist. It just doesn't go well for anyone. I tend to put things in terms of a high conflict situation. I'm involved in a high conflict situation, right? Or our interactions are, seem to be sort of high conflict or very challenging. Those would be my main reasons to avoid labeling.
And I've never one time heard someone go to someone they were having conflict with and say, hey, guess what? You're a narcissist. And the other person say, oh my gosh, you're right. You caught me. Where's the therapist? How can I sign up? Not that a therapist can fix a narcissist anyway, but I want to, like, if it's not working, don't try it. We have a lot of data that says that's not going to work.
Right. It just doesn't. They are, like I said, very vulnerable and thin-skinned. And this is just the rules of their operating system. And you have to understand that. And even though it can feel really good to say you're such a narcissist, at the end of the day, it's just going to backfire on you. And so dealing with someone like this in your life, the true management skills that work are ones that are in your own best interest. And what that means is doing things that are going to, you're understanding the rules of their operating system and managing those rules, operating within that. So you're managing that instead of them managing you.
And everyone needs to go back, like hit the rewind, okay? Because what she said, she has probably said 1,000 times. So she's just kind of like, oh yeah, that's like what's supposed to happen. But for many of you, I know that is not what is happening. So what she said is we have to operate off their operating system. And as much as we want, as much as it can make us feel good to, look, you've been putting me down all this time, and now I've got a label for you, and I'm going to stick that sticky note on your head. You said to make sure we are operating with what is in our best interest.
Yeah.
Right. The term
It's
I
true.
use is what problem you're trying to solve. Okay.
Yeah.
So if the problem you're trying to solve is making them feel bad, that's a bad problem to solve because they're going to make you feel worse. So the problem you're wanting to solve is getting the money for your kid's summer camp, or getting your paycheck that they owe you, or whatever it is. It's not to disrupt their operating system. Is that
right? You're spot on, because yeah, I guess the biggest challenge we've had in our work is to get people around the corner to understanding that they really, a true high conflict personality has to be, they are very different. They have a different operating system. And it's hard to get people around that corner. They understand that the behaviors are different from other people. It's like, oh, that's the most difficult person, what a narcissist, what a sociopath, whatever. But they don't really come around that corner to understand that they have to do something different. This is next level stuff I'm talking here, right? It's like, if I can, I guess, relate it to back in the days when the teacher would teach one way to the entire classroom, even though this child has dyslexia and this child has some other issue, and they need a little bit different teaching style. With the high conflict person, regular conflict management doesn't work. It often backfires. And so you have to understand that something different has to be done, and I have to manage this differently. And some people who still have a hard time catching on to that, and it could be because they're emotionally hooked, particularly in a divorce or co-parenting situation. We often are, and it's pretty normal. But if you can look at it like, you've had this problem for a long time, a medical problem, and then you go and find out that it's a cancer, right? Okay, now life changes. And I have to do something a lot more surgical or strategic. And so that's what we teach, is something very next level that's strategic. And it means I have to do the opposite of what I do with everyone else in conflict or in interactions, and the opposite of what I often feel like doing, because I might feel like striking back. I might feel like saying, you're such a sociopath, or you're a liar, or I'm just going to argue with you. And those things don't work with them. Explanations don't work with them. What does work is using a little technique we call using ear statements to calm people and connect with them, which I know sounds really cuckoo, because who wants to connect with someone who's making your life so challenging and difficult? But that's really the key, is to connect with them, to make them feel calmer. And then, you can get done what you need to get done after that. And then it's just kind of a strategy of using ear when appropriate.
And I hear, like, with the connect thing. And so if I was coaching someone who at this point said, oh, how do you connect? I would say, well, don't you want to do what works? Like,
right.
We all know what doesn't work. So if anyone was listening to her and had this little, like, gate rise up in their head. And I have a gate rise up in my head. That's not fair.
Yeah.
That's not fair. That's not fair.
Censor's not fair, right?
It's not.
A lot of things are not fair. But this is the reality. And it's hard to think of humans as being so damaging. But many of us are involved in relationships with them. It could be a family relationship, a work relationship, the marital relationship, co-parenting, whatever it is. And, you know, they didn't come with a piece of paper or a sign that says, I'm going to make your life really, really difficult and you're going to hate me at some point. So we find ourselves in these situations. It's like, what do we do now? How do I deal with this? And we're at such an emotional high point, and, you know, just exhausted, honestly. And maybe having finally stood up for ourselves after being dismissed for so long and being submissive for so long. And so then we kind of go on a bit of maybe a rampage, or we think, I'm going to stand up for myself and really tell them off. And it's like, that's just not going to work for you, because that's going to you're going to feed the fire or starve the fire. And, you know, going full out on somebody, going out on your ex is just not going to work, because it's just going to fan the flames. And instead, you want to do the opposite and connect with them. Doesn't mean you're going to go and, you know, tell them you love them or anything. It just means their brain is craving connection. And what that specifically means is your tone of voice. You use a calm tone of voice, a neutral tone of voice. You use words that make their brain feel connected, like, yeah, that does sound frustrating. Yeah, I'd probably be frustrated about that too. Those are ear statements. Those are connecting statements. Those calm a person down. And they're the opposite of what you want to do. But it's called strategy. It's called management and self-preservation, honestly. And at the end of the day, when you can do this, you gain a lot of confidence.
Because I know we were going to talk about co-parenting, and you wrote the High Conflict Co-Parenting Survival Guide. So may I give you like an example of like an email or something in a high conflict parenting situation, and you use this method back on my statement? Would
You
that
bet.
be okay?
Oh, let's do. That'll be fun.
I know, right? I have to think about, what do I want to say?
It's a challenge. I hope I pass.
Okay. So, you know, how dare you, I'm the toxic person for all the listeners. Okay. So how dare you send that email to the teacher? Don't you know that we have joint custody and we have joint education? So you shouldn't have contacted that teacher without telling me. And what kind of mother would do this? You know, if the kids are so much better off with me, and I was obviously, if you weren't so selfish, and we wouldn't even be divorced. How'd I do, Megan? You ever heard that statement?
Yes. Sounds familiar. And so have a billion other judges across the planet and family law attorneys, right?
Exactly. Yes.
Okay. So, an ear statement would be, that sounds really challenging. And it sounds like something, though, that we could work together to figure out. I'd like to see how I can help alleviate this, or help both of us avoid these challenges in the future. What suggestions do you have for me? Or you could end it with, what ideas have you already tried? Or you could end it with, would you like to put a list together and send it to me of your ideas? So the reason so at the beginning, I gave you a little ear, which could be so hard to do. And that's the connection part, right? Because you want to say, screw you, you jerk. But it's actually just calm them. And you think of it like if you work with horses, you work with dogs, you work with children. You know, when they're hurt, when they're acting out, when they're being hostile, we calm them. It's just really hard to do with your ex. But you use the same technique, and then you switch them into a thinking strategy. So you go from calming with ear to asking them a question to get them thinking. And the type of question you want to ask is something that gets them writing a list down or getting them focusing on a choice. Because when when you focus on a choice, when you get someone focusing on a choice, it makes them think. When they're thinking, they're in the logical part of their brain where the more calming emotions are contained. They're not in so much fight or flight, surviving, acting out, being very reactive mode. So if you calm their their reactive part of their brain, and then ask them questions to kind of shove them into the thinking part, the more you keep people in their thinking part of their brain, the less they're reacting. And that's really the key of what I'm talking about, connecting, with and calming them, is so that you get them calm, then get them thinking. It's the opposite of what we do with everyone else. You and I can have a conversation all day long, and you could say something to me that's challenging to me, like about something I've done, and I go, I might not like it, but I can go, okay, well, I see, what I did, and I can concede, and I might apologize even, or whatever. Or we can just problem solve something. But with a true high conflict person, they're going to be defensive and just always want to defend. And that's why you want to give them a little ear statement to connect and calm with them, then ask them a question, get them focused on a question. And that's it, and keep it really brief. So you've probably read our Biff strategy for responding to emails, and it's called Biff response, and the B is brief. Just keep it 2 to 5 sentences. So let's say that email you just rattled off there. You're a parent receiving that. Your first response is to defend yourself, or a first reaction. That's
Never
most humans.
do that. I know, and it's like, oh, never play defense. I'm trying to
Right.
before, never play defense.
Exactly. You're exactly right. And it's when you do, you're just going to keep that, that email cycle going. And that's what Biff is meant to do, is number one, give you structure. So let's say you've been listening to Sarah K and go, okay, I know I shouldn't be in that mode, but what do I do? And that's what Biff really does, is gives you a structure. So keep it brief, 2 to 5 sentences. So the goal of it is to prevent them from coming back with more. Because this, the email chains, as you all know, are just a huge time suck, and they're an emotional fire pit, right? So, then keep it informative, and that just means keep it on straight, neutral information. You don't have to defend yourself, give a bunch of opinions, anything like that, because that will just keep asking yourself, is what I'm writing going to bring back more emails? And you don't want more emails. And by the way, I think one of the best things about using this Biff structure is you have to remember that the true high conflict person has all this energy and reactivity stored up in that right brain, and it comes very quickly, right? So they can go from just fine to really mad in a split second, and you've probably all experienced this. And once they do, it feels like a crisis to them. Well, right now, I've got to get it off my chest. So, they take their phone and they text it, or they voice text it, or they email or something. And now you've got, as soon as they hit send, guess what they feel? Better. Because the anxiety goes down, because now they have that out. And I call it keyboard vomit, or vomit through the keyboard. Now they've hit send, it comes to you, and you're sitting there going, I'm so pissed off, I'm so angry, whatever. And you just want to type back something. And even if you're controlling yourself a bit from saying what you really want to say, we often don't have a way to structure it. So that's what Biff does. So brief, informative, and then friendly, just a friendly tone. Doesn't have to be over the top, but just a friendly tone, and firm. So you're just going to close it firmly. And if you need a response back from them, you just ask them a question that makes them choose between 2 choices. Like, would you like to drop off the kids at 4 o'clock or 6 o'clock? Something like that. And then it gives them, that shoves them into left brain, where they have to think and respond that way. If you just leave it open-ended, it'll just, put a bunch more in there. And then you top it off with, you don't want to you want to check it for the 3 A's. Don't give advice, don't give admonishments, and don't give apologies. Mm-hmm. Advice is just, they're going to get defensive. Admonishments the same. And apologies, this is always the big one. And if you apologize, it's probably for something you haven't done wrong when you're dealing with a high conflict person. You're apologizing because you're a fixer, or you're a conflict avoider, or you have a lot of anxiety, and in the moment you just say, I'm sorry, right? But that just validates in their mind that it is all your fault, whatever they're blaming you about.
And even more importantly, because I try not to worry about them too much at all, if it comes up in court later, an apology can look like an admission of guilt,
Yes,
right?
correct. Good,
So
really good point.
thank you. I do this all the time. No, my lawyer's always like, you should have been a lawyer. I was like, I think you're really confused about what I do. I think you know, but that I have heard and advised. I love your opinion on it. You know, I disagree with the the above statement, or I disagree with the last email. Not everything that you ever disagree with, but if it came up, you're not admitting guilt, or you're not going into defense of every detail, but you're not saying I'm going to go with everything they said was right. Is that?
Yeah, I mean, you can if an email needs a response, you can just put the facts in there and then biff it. Just make sure it's brief. Just make sure it's informative. And really, the informative piece is what people get confused about, because they're not sure what's informative and what's not. Like if you said, I don't agree with this. Okay, let's analyze that. Would you keep that in or not? You could say it. Could you say it a different way or not? If you say, I do not agree with this, with someone with a true narcissistic personality, what are they going to respond with to that? They're going to say, well, I don't care if you do. I know what's right. So you could restate it to a fact, right? Instead of, I do not agree with this, you could say, on January 3rd, I was at blah, 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 and picked up the kids.
The end. And I want very clearly, like, that is the end, not a whole 4 paragraphs defending where you were in January, because that's what informative feels like if you've been over explaining yourself.
True. That's very true. True. So Biff is interesting because you can use it to respond. It gets you, because that's really, especially in co-parenting, is the biggest challenge. One of the biggest challenges is just all the email and text back and forth. And I know there's software programs out there to help that, but I really encourage people to learn to do this on their own because it is really empowering. It sounds like you really help people with that too. And so but it could also be used as if you have that difficult email to write, as of the originating person, or a difficult letter to write or something. This can really help pull out your emotion from it. And I've written emails that I had email regret over later, and I even biffed them, but I knew there was still a little hook in there, and it was like I just wanted to get at that person a bit. And I know that's super unprofessional, but it's true. We're humans, right? It's life. And then I send that email, and it backfires. So if you're really hooked, emotionally hooked, you know that you are. And so biff it again. And if you still know you're hooked, and you really want to manage this well, just have a friend biff it for you one more time, because they're not going to have the emotion attached, and they just take that piece out. And so it requires some discipline, but it's all, personal choice, how much you want to be involved in high conflict drama.
Oh, yeah. And I was on a podcast, where I wasn't the interviewer, and they said, gosh, when you talk about this, it just seems so unfair. And I said, when you are dealing with toxic people or high conflict people, you need to throw out fair and ask what works, ask what's strategic.
That's right.
I really want to bring us back to that point, because it is just so unfair. And, and I think when people which brings us to our next point, but when people are looking for co-parenting coaching or parallel parenting coaching, often what they're looking for is, how do I really send the hook that will make them change and change their personality? And I say they're not going to change. They may change strategies. They're not going to change personalities.
Right. Personalities don't change. You're exactly right. And they for them, I call these relationship disorders, and it's usually in the most intimate relationships where this stuff comes out. Not always. It can extend into other relationships as well, but their interactions are just their deficit in interacting with people, and they're really driven by this fear-based operating system. And once you understand it, it becomes very predictable. So your life becomes much calmer. and you can take the wind out of their sails or not. I've seen people who get very good at this and manage to have what would have been an extraordinarily high conflict situation for years. And with one email or one phone conversation, actually turn it around. And with, maybe 15 years later, get that thank you text message from their ex saying, thank you for being a good parent. And it's because they used good strategy, meaning not getting hooked. And when they do, go get some help. Using ear and using Biff. These are really, really simple strategies that I know it sounds almost insane to think about. These small, simple skills can turn a lot around. And I know there's legal disputes, there's other factors involved, but for your own sanity, just using some of these real simple techniques can be huge game changers.
And in regards to your own sanity, I saw from your website before we got talking, you studied hundreds of practices and thousands of parents, and you and your co-author of the High Conflict Parenting Survival Guide found 3 skills that kids need for healthy, happy families. And if you want to name them, I will, or I wrote them. Okay, I'll write them down. Yeah, I was like, I wouldn't remember if somebody asked me this from one of my books. No way. But it's always what I'm using air quotes, podcast people, what I'm preaching. I hate to, be too preachy about it, but it's like, I really do, I want everyone to hear again, thousands of parents. Here's what we know works. Now, a lot of what we're talking about on this podcast, what Megan and I think both end up with is what people wish would work.
Yeah.
Like, I wish this would work. I want this to work. Okay, are you interested in what actually works? Like according to data, not my opinion, your opinion, but according to data. And it's love and affection for your child. Ability, here's this one. Everybody listening, turn the radio up. Ability to manage your own stress. Okay, which is why we don't want to get hooked up into these high drama conversations like we've been talking about the first half. And turn it up again, demonstrating healthy relationship skills with, if possible, the co-parent, even if it's just this like very distant, suck out the drama, and other adults. Okay, so I'm going to go back over those again.
Okay.
Love and affection for your child, ability to manage your own stress, and demonstrating healthy relationship skills.
Yep. Ding, 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 check, check, check. So say the first one again. Love and affection for your child. Yeah, I mean, it just goes without saying, the longer I do this work, the more I realize how important parenting is. Good, solid parenting. And what's that mean? It means protecting your child, loving your child, and learning self-management techniques, which ties into number 2. So that you're showing them how to manage their emotions. So we at HDI really believe in 4 main things in life. If you have these 4 skills developed, you can have pretty good relationships throughout your life. One is how to manage, if you can learn to manage your emotions. So if you're a parent that's involved in a high conflict divorce or any situation, co-parenting, long-term, all that stuff, or if it's a family relationship, doesn't matter what relationship it is. If you role model for your children how to manage emotions under stress, guess what? They're going to learn to manage their emotions under stress, right? But if you're blowing up and you're screaming and yelling and crying and pushing your emotions out on them, right? Some of them are going to start feeling responsible for your emotional well-being, and others are going to learn the wrong way to handle emotions. So learn how to manage your emotions. Learn how to have moderate behaviors instead of extreme behaviors. And this is all right brain, left brain stuff, right? Right brain is extreme behaviors and, to get you out of danger. But left brain is how to, have moderate behaviors so you can have good relationships. So an extreme behavior is slamming doors, is screaming at your excuse me, at the other person, screaming at your kids, hitting your kids, putting stuff on social media about the other parent that's derogatory. There are other things in more high conflict divorces. We see all the way up to domestic violence. Property damage. Those are all extreme things. Lying, cheating, fudging numbers, anything like that. Those are extreme. So we have two things so far: how to manage your emotions, how to have moderate behaviors, how to have flexible thinking instead of all or nothing. Now we are living right now in a time of all or nothing, very divided, us against them, right? And if you can teach your children to think about things in flexible, in many options, explore many options to a problem, instead of, well, here's the problem, here's one solution, that's it, right? That's a super valuable skill. And then the last one is taking responsibility instead of blaming. And blame is the key component of the high conflict personality. So we don't want our kids to be budding little HCPs. We want to teach them how to have, take responsibility for their actions instead of blaming. And you as the parent have to role model that. So love and affection, absolutely number one. Number two, managing your own stress. And, co-parenting can be one of the most stressful and difficult things ever. So if you need help, go get help. I've been to therapy myself. I've been a single parent. It is hard work. I've been a step parent. Hard work. Very stressful. Some of the most stressful stuff ever. So, I went to therapy when I needed help. And there are other things you can do too. But if you find yourself not being able to manage your emotions, go get some help. Get some friends to support you, get some colleagues, or go to a therapist.
And I want to echo that to say, I've never heard, I believe in data, as I know you do. And when you and I have had some really cool conversations with some really cool people. I've never heard of one person say, I just did it on my own. I read a couple books, did it on my own, figured it out all by myself, and took my life from A to Z. Never. I mean, I've not heard one person say that. And so if there's any piece of you right now that's hearing Megan and I'm embarrassed I can't manage my stress, I'm embarrassed about those healthy relationship skills, just take heart. And I want to, and I want to add that if you get divorced, and a high conflict person, there's two people, a high conflict person, the other, I'll call you the other, and a lot of times we call it empath versus narcissist. I don't, but a lot of people are reading that language right now. And, and they continue to go on and have high conflict personalities, high conflict situations with people. Your kids will see it. You better not be having high conflict situations with people. If your ex is saying you're crazy, you better not give your kids any data to enforce that. If they're saying your mom's depressed, she's nuts, she's always losing her temper, if you're calm and you have healthy relationships and healthy friendships and you have love and affection, and you can have bad days, but your kids aren't worried walking on eggshells around you that mama's gonna blow her mind, you're going to quote unquote win the situation just by doing the right thing, not by pointing out the person's behavior, but just living in such extreme contrast that it's impossible to see or not to see who the problem is. Would you agree with that, Megan?
Oh, 100%. I just had this conversation 2 hours ago with someone whose own mother is threatening her own daughter's life. Is she realistic about it? I don't know, but she's a person who doesn't stop herself. And this is what people have to understand about people with high conflict personalities, is they don't stop themselves, and they're going to keep self-sabotaging and showing themselves to be who they are. People tell you who they are. Now, sometimes we get it wrong. Sometimes the courts get it wrong because there's a lot of misinformation. That's what high conflict people do. And this is what the court situation this morning is. The mother, who has a very long record, jail, domestic violence, things like this, and it's an order of protection hearing, didn't show up, but showed up on the phone and starts bad-mouthing, blaming, just putting all kinds of accusations at a time when it's just to set a trial date, right? And so this person is kind of showing the court who they are, and guess what? You get to do the same. So you show the court that you're a pretty boring person, and boring's really good because you're not high conflict. You know how to manage your emotions. You know how to have moderate behaviors, flexible thinking, and take responsibility and own things and be a good role model to your children. Love your children. Sure, we're going to make mistakes. Sure, we all come from our own recipe of either bad parenting that we got, bad role modeling we got, maybe trauma, maybe abuse, maybe came in from a foster care situation, whatever. But we all have an opportunity to change, an opportunity to tweak ourselves and get better and better. So you get to write the story for the court. You get to write the story for your children, and loving them and protecting them, and not overprotecting or underprotecting, but just the right level, right? Those are all good things.
I agree completely, Megan. And I used to say that, because my heart breaks when I hear parents say, well, my kid's stronger than me, because I'll say things like, worried about leading, your kids following in your footsteps. And they say, well, that won't happen. My daughter's stronger than me, or my son's stronger than me. And I want to vomit.
Thank you. Me too.
Unfair to your children. It is so unfair to your children.
Yeah. Do you know where I hear it all the time is on reality television shows like the music contests and that. Somebody will go on there and they're interviewing them and on the show, and they say, well, I just want my kids to be proud of me. Literally hear this almost every episode of every show. I just want my child to be proud of me. It's like, no, where did we get this turned around? Your kid's supposed to be, you're supposed to be teaching them. You're not supposed to be such a victim in life that you are needing your child to be proud of you. I mean, of course, we want our families to be proud of us, our kids to be proud of us, but that shouldn't be your driving, motivating force. It really should be, you're teaching your child. You are the role model. You are the instructor. You are the guide to help them get to that age 25 when their brain's fully formed enough to make good decisions for themselves.
Lead by example. That's preach. All kinds of preaching today. Next, where can people find more about you and your work?
So our website is highconflictinstitute.com. We also have another one called conflictplaybook.com, and there's a parenting course on that site that teaches all these skills I talked about, like Biffing, and it's really a lot of good stuff, and it's specifically designed for high conflict divorce and co-parenting. But it works. It's helpful for anyone. And then if you're thinking about falling in love again, we wrote a book called Dating Radar, so you can avoid these high conflict personality types. It's really good, and there's a website for it. So I would suggest, if you're dating right now and you want to see if you have some suspicions about the person you're dating, whether it's new or you've been in it a long time, just go read the comments on the survey that we did of people who come out of high conflict relationships, romantic relationships, and you'll learn a lot. I'll just say that. So anyway, yeah, that's where they can find us, and our books are everywhere books are sold. And
I want to bring back to, let's go on the dating radar, love and affection for yourself.
Yes. Yes.
And you need to manage your own stress.
Yep.
Have healthy relationships. If you don't have any healthy relationships in your life, start with friends before you start dating. Like, get some of those relationship skills. So otherwise, I mean, the data around people who, I don't want to scare people, but I do, the data around a multitude of toxic relationships is very high. The chances of ending up in another.
Yeah, we wrote this book hoping that young people would read it before they hook up, right? Or get married, or commingle, or have a baby, or buy a house together, or take that road trip together, right? And they don't mostly. It's usually people who've already been in a high conflict divorce or such a romantic relationship read this book and go, oh, that's what happened. That's where it went wrong. So I hope that my hope for the coming generations is that they'll be more proactive about understanding this type of stuff before they get too romantically involved. Because speaking of data, the study that we rely on, and the numbers could be a little bit off, but I don't think so. It shows that about 22 to 23% of the U.S. population have one of the 5 personality disorders that we kind of say underlie this high conflict personality. And not all people with those disorders have a high conflict personality, but some do. So if it's 20, let's say even 20% of the US population have one of these 5 personality disorders or a combination, and let's say even half have a high conflict personality, that's a lot of people. If we, 330 million people in this country, and you do the math, that's still millions and millions of people that you're going, tens of millions that have a high conflict personality, and we're marrying them. So you need to be able to identify them in advance and avoid them if at all possible.
Yeah, and in several of your guys' work, I'm curious, since publications and whatnot, there's been a lot of talk that that number is on the rise. It was originally kind of 1 in 10, and now we're looking at 1 in 5, which Sandra L. Brown of the Institute for Relational Harm agrees with the 1 in 5 number.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. Any explanation for why you think this is on the rise?
Yeah, I think, like I mentioned a few minutes ago, I think some people underprotect their kids, and then you've got neglect and abuse. And so a lot of this most of it, I think, is based in trauma and or attachment, lack of attachment, insecure attachment in those formative years. There may be a little bit of temperament at birth, but I think it's a lot of attachment, a lot trauma. Role modeling, and then larger culture, what we're teaching our kids, to be all about me. I mean, think about the term selfie. It's about the self. Everything's about me. And I think we're sort of, there's some kids that are either, whether they're underprotected or overprotected by their parents, they get into this, it's all about me thing. And they're not, if we tie that then to those 4 key skills I talked about, which are managing your emotions. Are they learning that? Are they learning it from TV? I doubt it. Are they learning it at home? Social media? I don't know. Are they learning to manage, to have moderate behaviors instead of extreme behaviors? Well, what are they seeing on TV? What are they seeing their parents do? What are they seeing the larger culture do? Taking responsibility. We're in a blaming us versus them culture more than ever the last 2 years, right? It's me against you. It's just lots of division. And then all or nothing. We're just living in this all or nothing society, and the true high conflict personality really does that. So I think it's a combination of things, but as we become more all about me, we become less about the community and taking care of each other. I'm right at this moment sitting in a hotel in my hometown where I grew up, a fairly tiny town in Nebraska, and it's a community that that helps each other. And when you get in more urban centers, yes, you do have some of that, but you also lose some of that. And as we become more globally connected, we kind of become less connected in taking care of each other. So kind of a balance. I like to teach my kids, take care of others, take care of yourself, love your family, protect your family, and do the best you can.
There's a book, All Joy, No Fun, and it talks about what being a good person used to mean, or being a good parent. It used to mean helping them serve the community. And now being a good parent, and this is going to sound crazy, but I don't think this author's wrong, is like making sure your kids are in a lot of sports and activities, like, and showing up for school projects and showing up, like, and it used to be like, I grew up in a town probably similar to yours, and my dad was a pastor. So much of my life was in service to other people. I had a pastor, parent, and a nurse mother, right? So my life, right? So much of my life to the detriment a bit. I swung a little to the other side, which is why I'm in this work. But it was interesting because that was like what was like expected to be a good parent. And this author was like, now what a good parent means is I'm always at my kids' ball games. And it's a really interesting shift where the child becomes the primary member of the family. Like, I would never have asked my dad to change the radio station.
Oh, ever. Girl. Oh, yeah. The first time somebody did that, I was just apoplectic. I have to say, it's just, you and I go very similarly, I think.
I think so too.
It's,
Yes.
not everything from our childhoods were perfect, but yeah, I remember myself when my parents had somebody for dinner one time, and we often, when it was very rare at our house, we had people for lunch after Sunday church a lot, but not out for dinner in the evening. And so somebody came, and I went to bed at 7:30. It was at my bedtime. And my parents turned on the hi-fi. I'm betraying my age a little bit. They had music on, and I couldn't sleep. And I went out to the living room, and I turned that off in front of them. And yeah, I see your face. And it was the most trouble I ever got in,
Yeah.
But that's what it takes. And I see parents now just making the child the God. And we're just making all these budding little narcissists that it's all about them, all about that. What do you want to eat? Do you want, it's all, where are we going to go? McDonald's or Kentucky Fried Chicken, whatever. But, I don't remember my parents asking that. And it's interesting. I've got two grandkids now, and another one in about a month. And I watch them raising their children, and it's just very fascinating to see, depending on where the other parent was raised and kind of how they raised their children. Like here I am in Nebraska, and my one son is married to another Nebraska girl, and grew up in a very rural environment, and had to work hard, and had to, she really understands what it takes to make a child understand consequences, and how to, take care to not step in that hole or get bitten by that rattlesnake or things. And to kind of give back, even though, these are toddlers, to care for other people, right? It starts really early. And I think we're just really kind of, and I don't want to say this in a really negative way, but we're kind of dumbing down our kids, and we're telling them you need to have social responsibility, but we make it all about them. My parents, I sit just like 2 blocks from the church I grew up in, and 2 blocks from the nursing home where we used to go after church on Sundays and do a nursing home service for the elderly. And I'd have to go down the hallway to these people's rooms, and it's just a child. And now I think parents would be appalled to think that their kids, I've never send my kid into some strange older person's home. I would never put them through that. Well, guess what? That's the best thing you can do. I learned how to talk to people and how to put others ahead of myself. And I think, I'm so glad you brought this up. Here I am, a soapbox, but I think if parents would just do a whole lot more of that, and a whole lot less of trying to make your kid a professional athlete. And I'm not knocking athletics or music or education. All that's important, but there's got to be a balance in learning to care for other people.
No, Megan, you're on my soapbox. It's just why I just crossed my arm and sat back, and I was like, okay, just right? So people are like, oh, wow, you're so good at conversations. I'm like, yeah, try going to funerals once a week, or going to the nursing home all the time when people are dying, and come on, Sarah, sing a song to them. They're about to die tomorrow. Sing Amazing Grace. Yeah, conversations as an adult aren't that hard.
Right.
And
do you remember the first person you met that had never been to a funeral, and they're an adult, and you're like, what? I've been to 72 funerals.
Right? Last year.
right. And you realize, that's a really good point, is that I think you and I probably have a pretty good, healthy view on life and death, because whereas people who've never been to a funeral or been to very few, I just see it, they're much more challenged. And I see it as it's just a part of life, right? And I mean, it's sad.
Oh yeah, my husband thinks I'm so weird. He's like, what? What do you mean it's just a part of life? It's like, well, we heard it on The Lion King, right? Didn't Simba sing that, or that? The Song of Life, Elton John told us all about it.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's just not something I fear, or even during the pandemic, when people were just, of course I was scared because of the unknown, in terms of I don't want to end up, but I mean, I was the weirdo that immediately called a meeting of my adult children and said, hey, you guys probably don't know that I have a will. We've never had reason to discuss it, but it's kind of recent, but we have, a trust set up, and here's the person that you would call, and and I'm sure they thought it was very morbid, but they also know that I read obituaries for enjoyment because I love to hear about the best parts of people's lives. High five.
Did you leave? No, my uncle's an insurance agent, and then my other uncle is like a will lawyer. So this is all the conversations that are very normal in our family. So Megan, you have gone off on all my soapboxes today, and I appreciate it.
I've probably gone a little overboard, but it's been really enjoyable. I got all excited. Sister.
We talk to people. And remember at the beginning of this, I said, this is going to be amazing because you're going to hear every dark topic in the world, but it's going to be so light and bubbly and like our little BFF chat. So Megan, thank you so much for coming on. You guys check her out, check her link in the show notes. And Megan, thank you for helping us become toxic person proof.
Thank you.